All right, guys. So, in addition to just being a 3D comic creator here, I wanted to talk about comics because that's what we do. I mean, we want to make these comics. We enjoy comics. So I started thinking I would just go ahead and start reviewing some of these comics that I like. And you guys can get to know what I like. You can let me know what you like. But anyway, I decided to start with this X-Men and Fantastic Four that just came out just last week. And it's always interesting to me because this is a comic I really enjoyed, and yet there was a lot of negative things about it, but that's what makes a comic good. If I just tossed it to the side and didn't think about it later, then I wouldn't call that a good comic. But either way, let's get into this thing. So the situation here, I need to preface this by saying that there are very, 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 very few superheroes or teams I have less respect for than the Fantastic Four. I just don't like those mofos. I mean, I have not liked them since the 1980s John Byrne era. And actually, I didn't even like them then. It's just the stories were so good, I wanted to see what happened. And that's just how good John Byrne was. He just made some really good stories. All right. And normally I would be 100% on the X-Men side, but they've been acting pretty shady recently. I mean, did anyone read the X-Force number 6 from last week? I mean, super shady. Beast is talking about cleaning up damaging information with bribes, planted evidence, memory erasures, and false news reports. I mean, wow. It was like so much for being heroes. That part of the X-Men's history is a thing of the past. But, I mean, I think the X-Men Krakoa situation has gotten out of hand pretty much from Jump Street. I kind of knew it would go off the rails, but that's just, that's just where it goes. Anyway, about the issue itself. So clearly there's going to be spoilers, so I hope you read this beforehand. Anyway, this is by Chip Zdarsky. I don't know too much about him. I know I enjoy his work. I'm reading his work on Daredevil now, so I'm enjoying that. So I really had no fear of that. The Dodsons do some great artwork that is always nice to look at, so can't go wrong there. Anyway, what the situation is that the X-Men, of course they founded their own nation on Krakoa, a nation just for mutants. Franklin Richards, the son of Reed and Sue Richards of the Fantastic Four, is a mutant, possibly the world's most powerful mutant, and Xavier has decided that it's time for Franklin to come and be with his people. So what happens is we get Kitty Pryde here, and they try to, Xavier says, well, we need Kitty to go and talk to him because Franklin, he did kind of interact with Kitty 30 years ago in the original X-Men Fantastic Four crossover when Kitty was dying, and, Franklin was just a little kid then, and they talked and blah, blah, blah. In my opinion, the relationship is really overblown here and forced. I don't think there's any way he thought about her in years. And it's already extremely manipulative of Xavier to pull this shit. I mean, excuse my language. Very sorry. But yeah. And then Franklin kind of goes and says what everyone is thinking about Reed not being able to fix him and Ben. See, Franklin's problem now is that he had near limitless power, but now every time he uses his power, he's losing a bit of it. So he's getting less and less powerful with each use. And so far, Reed, his father, can't fix him. And we all know the story with the Thing. He can't be fixed either. It's pretty ridiculous at this point. So, I mean, this is kind of the sort of thing that should probably be left out and not mentioned because nothing's really going to be done about it anyway. And this is what happens when BS super science gets out of control. You start running out of excuses. Like Franklin's like, why can't he fix either of us? And everyone is forced to say, yeah, why can't he do that? He can do everything else. Everything else in the entire world except this. And then I thought, well, can't Franklin do anything? Why can't he fix himself? But, I mean, he can create an entire universe. He can't fix himself. So, I'm sure there's, BS reason over in Fantastic Four why he couldn't, but I would never have read it because, again, I just don't like those mofos. Anyway, so another thing is, too, is like, I know you need drama, but couldn't this have been done with a phone call? I mean, I guess Xavier couldn't be sure that Reed would even tell Franklin about this if he just called him. And it makes it seem even more manipulative on Xavier's part that he just shows up, with a whole company contingent of X-Men in full regalia in front of their house and is like, hey, let's do this. So it's a little bit off on Xavier's part. And like I said, they're acting shady. And it's like, can't you take off that darn helmet? What is with that helmet? Take that thing. Can't you just look somebody in the eye? But you can't do that. It's just weird that this is a guy who studies psychology. I mean, he's not just a telepath. He's a doctor of behavior and such. And he must have wanted this particular response. And Reed says something to Xavier like, hey, I think that there's something going on here because you could have just waited. He could have just extended the invitation and let Franklin make up his own mind in a couple years. But Reed says it seems like there's a timetable here. So we don't know what's going on. Xavier, the X-Men are always up to something now. And it's just pretty interesting. And then Xavier is saying things like, oh, it might be safer, for Franklin if he was on Krakoa. And I couldn't help but think that it might be safer for the X-Men if Franklin was on Krakoa. Because they might not be attacked so much if the attackers knew they would be condemned by the rest of the world for killing Reed and Sue Richards' son. That might be the kind of heat that they don't want. So maybe Franklin is kind of a shield? I don't know. And I mean, the FF have enemies, no doubt. When was the last time someone killed Reed just because he existed? I mean, Xavier just got killed and resurrected a few months ago. Killed because of what he is. And it's like the Fantastic Four don't know anything about that. And speaking of, I mean, the worst person in the entire book is Sue Richards. She's awful. I mean, her and Reed is probably the worst, but Sue is the second worst. The X-Men show up. She puts up a force field immediately. It's like, hey, Sue, how's it going? And a force field goes up. I'm like, what? Okay. Then she initiates violence. She attacks Magneto just for talking to Franklin. What? And, Sue is one of those scary people where anything is justifiable when it's about their kids. And I expect people to protect their children, but I don't expect people to initiate violence where there was none. And no one even threatened to take her kid. They were just saying, hey, he should come visit us. So she's like Psycho Mom, if you ever saw Married with Children, where they had Psycho Dad, and then they had the spin-off, Psycho Mom, it's Psycho Mom, she's Psycho Mom. And that's what I started calling her. But, I mean, then Sue is talking this crap about we don't like segregation. That's why we live on Yancey Street. And it's like, Sue, shut up. Where were you in Reed? Where, when the killer robots were hunting down mutants? And when the government had versions of those killer robots parked on the X-Men's lawn after the Decimation storyline, they had to look out the window, see giant mutant hunting robots. And it's like, what? She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. I mean, she says she's like, we don't want segregation, but she strikes me as the hypocritical type who are like, oh yeah, we should let people move wherever they want, but not next to me. No, what, that's crazy. But, I mean, although, to walk back a little bit, to give her just a little benefit of the doubt, just a little bit, because I don't like her, during the Onslaught crossover from the 90s, Xavier Onslaught did show up with almost this exact same spiel and actually did take Franklin. So, I mean, I guess there's a little bit of precedence for her reaction, just a tiny bit. Anyway, after she attacks Magneto, and Xavier says, hey, let Magneto go, or I'm going to make you let him go. And Reed is saying, hey, how dare you? We don't need your mental violations. Even though, and Xavier is saying, hey, she's the one who incited violence. And, Reed just comes out with this stuff. But this is what happens when things get stressful. You find out what people really think of you. Stuff just comes out. It comes out that you didn't expect. So this is what Reed was thinking about Charles Xavier the whole time, that he was mentally violating people, which actually he was. That's kind of his stock and trade back in the days. He just erased people's memories. Like, he didn't see anything. Like, whatever, but what's funny is we find out that Reed has physically violated his own son by implanting a device in him to mask his mutant signature. Because Franklin tries to go through the Krakoa gate, he can't, because it doesn't recognize him as a mutant, because Reed put a device in his own kid to mask the mutant signature. So, I mean, what a violation. He's supposed to be helping him. And then, again, Reed is just the worst, because it's like, Reed, don't you think it would have been nice if other mutants who have been persecuted and hunted down could mask their mutant signature as well? I mean, pretty low. It's like you had the power to help all these years, but you refused to. And it's very difficult for me to describe just how low my opinion of Reed and Sue Richards is. You'd think they would speak out to help mutant kind, to make the world safer for their son, but they only make sure his little piece of the world is safe. All the other mutants can go kick rocks, man, and hope for the best, because they don't care. And it's just, what would it mean for Reed and Sue Richards to speak out and say, hey, mutants are people. Why can't you give them a chance? My son is a mutant. You guys know that, right? But they're not saying nothing. They're not saying nothing. And then later on, when the Thing is telling Reed, hey, you were wrong to violate your son, which he was. And then Sue has the nerve to tell Reed what he did was wrong. It's like, no, Sue, you don't get to tell anyone that they're wrong, because you're awful. And she literally says, yeah, I would have killed the X-Men if they were, what? You would have? I mean, I guess if they tried to take Franklin, I guess I could understand that, but they didn't. Why is killing them coming? What? Crazy ass. But anyway, so, I mean, the Fantastic Four here are pretty lucky. If the X-Men wanted to take Franklin, they would have just taken him. Only Franklin could have stopped them. The Fantastic Four are horribly outclassed by the X-Men. And Xavier could have just put them to sleep. Magneto himself could have taken out the Fantastic Four. There's like nothing they could do about it. I mean, Magneto is insanely powerful. It's like, the more I start learning about physics and things, it's like, this guy is incredibly powerful, and the Fantastic Four just don't measure up, which is part of the reason I just don't like those mofos. And again, I mean, did you see that X-Force from last week? The FF is pretty lucky that Xavier didn't send in his Wetworks team and just murk the whole Fantastic Four in their sleep, because that's the next step for the X-Men, pretty much. I mean, the bottom line here is, even though I know a lot of this seems negative, just because I don't like the Fantastic Four, but this story energized me. It engaged me, energized me. You can see how excited I am about it. Really good story. I want to see what happens next, and that is the mark of a great comic. And to me, Zdarsky's doing a great job here. Everything is top notch. I just can't wait to see where this goes. We see at the end, we've got some Doctor Doom action coming up. Doom is one of my favorites when handled right. We'll see how it's handled here. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. But let me know what you guys think of this, and leave me a comment, and we'll discuss. Anyway, I will catch you guys next time.